basically see a whole bunch of data. Click on any one of those data, and that will activate that. If you want to see how much data you have, touch the end on your keyboard, the end key, E-N-D. And it will go to the end or the bottom of the column. If you go to the bottom of your column, it should be your last data, should be right beside row number 1000. If you want to make sure that's the last one, use the down arrow and you can see there's no data in the next column. So here's 1,000 pieces of data that this thing generated. What do they look like? Let's go back and draw a histogram. Easy enough to follow the instructions? Do I need to keep walking you through? Graph. On the menu bar, find graph. About 5 or 6 down, you'll find histogram. Click on histogram. Can everybody read these instructions okay? Follow me? Okay? Now, here's where the quotes become funny. And I know this is the case because we wrestled with this in my Stat 2 class last semester. The easiest way to enter your variables is you go over here and you double click on either anywhere along the top here, it doesn't matter. Just double click and it will enter the name. Now, one of the idiosyncrasies in Minitab, sometimes it will put the single quote on it and sometimes it won't, depending on the dialog box. Histogram, it will never put it on there. But there are some, like ANOVA analysis function or ANOVA boxes. There are some other analysis boxes where sometimes it puts quotes on and sometimes it does not. If you don't put them on and it wants them, you will get an error message and it will not run. If you put them on and it doesn't want them, it will not run. So rather than type them in, I always put them in with a point click. You can double click or you can click and press on select. Depending on, some people have trouble with that double click timing. So, okay? Now, the next item I want you to select is to go down and select options. We want it to be a frequency histogram. That's the default, so it's already selected. We want it to identify the cut points, the class boundaries, if you wish. We're going to define them. So click on, you have to click on the button in front of midpoint, cut point positions, and then we have to tell it what numbers. And you don't have to, I want you to. Minitab will make automatic decisions if you want, but we want to define it. And I've set it up here so that it will do it in half standard deviations. From, what are we, was it 200? No, 100. So we're 4 standard deviations below to 4 above. That way we've got some numbers that we could sort of easily check. As soon as you have those, now I'm going to suggest here, if you really want to print it, you may. If you're going to print it, you may want to, click OK there, I'm sorry. Come back to the main dialog window. Under annotations, you can put footnotes and titles and stuff on. I'm going to suggest this morning we skip that, just because of time. Okay? If you're going to print it, you may want to open it and put your name on it, just so you know when it comes off the printer it was yours. Okay, what else did I have on there? I think that was it. Click on OK, and we should get a histogram. This, of course, is where we get some time. This is where that squirrel is going to, or that little chipmunk is going to be. Oh, you're ahead of us, yeah. So the trouble is here, it's like, you know, you ever drive by McDonald's when a bus unloaded? I mean, if you go to McDonald's, you certainly don't want to go when a school bus just unloaded, right? Well, that's just what happened here. We just gave the system all these at once, and it will take an extra second or two, unfortunately. That is a high-resolution graph.
So I won't be able to cut and paste that into a...
Oh, absolutely.
I would be able to...
Absolutely.
Into a word processing.
Question, while we're waiting for your histograms to pop up. Where did it go? Bats isn't up yet. Okay. Okay. The question was about cutting and pasting, for example.
They wouldn't look like anyway, because we have different data.
Let me inject here. One of the things that I do with most of these kinds of lessons, this document is a file and it's on the network. So in class, while students are doing this, they're supposed to be writing notes. I believe in the writing across the curriculum technique, and so I have them write paragraphs about everything. 25 words about this, 50 words about that, whatever. Just make them write and talk about it. Honestly, the first half of the semester, all I do is count the number of words. Let me finish. I am an absolute SOB. If you only have 15 words down there, it's supposed to be 20, you get 25, you get it back and you got to write them again. There is nothing in this life more painful than getting a math student to write a sentence, let alone a short paragraph. It takes at least half a semester for them to realize that those English functions that they learn somewhere can be used to talk about mathematics and statistics. Don't read them until mid-semester. However, after mid-semester, you count the words. You make sure they write enough because you've got to get them in the habit of writing. After mid-semester, you start reading them. And you will be amazed at the nice answers you will get. If you've been a son of a gun before. If you go, yeah, okay, you only wrote 15, that's okay. If you go soft, you won't get good answers ever. Okay? That's one of the hardest things as a teacher for me. I mean, I hate to do that, but if you give me 15 words, do it again. I mean, that's awful, but you have to demand, and you will get it. And you'll be surprised at the end of the semester, they will be able to tell you what that t-test or that confidence interval they did is all about, and it'll actually read like a paragraph. Okay? So I do that a lot, okay? So anyhow, they have to turn this thing as a written report. So when it comes time for them to turn it in, I don't want their handwriting. None of them took penmanship class. I know that. Okay? So this document is on the M drive. That's our network. They pull it up, they key in their answers where it goes, they print off a fresh copy with all typed answers. That's what I get to read. Okay? And there's all kinds of combinations in between. Now usually I don't give them 8-page documents that are that way, okay? But that's the concept, that's one of the ways I use that, okay? Now, anyhow, at this point, all we want to do is say, hey, yes, it looks normal. I don't want anything more than that. I just want to convince them that the numbers that this magic box is giving them just might be a normal distribution, okay? Maybe we ought to have some statistics about it, see if the mean and the standard deviation are close. This one's a quick one. Oh, I guess I didn't put it in here. Maybe all I wanted to do at this point was to just convince them it appeared normal. I guess they can look at it and say, gee, yeah, it looks like it's pretty close to a mean of 100. They've heard of the empirical rule by now. What would you guess the standard deviation was? Clearly, 99% of the data is between what on that graph up there, minus 25 and 250 or so. I mean, there's only a very few pieces of data way out here. So they ought to be able, that ought to convince them the standard deviation is pretty close to 50. So all I want here is for them to feel comfortable that this random number generator is doing what it's supposed to. So now we draw one sample. Okay? Calculate. All right, everybody with me, or do you want? Are we okay? This group seems to be the first group that half of them didn't throw up their hands.
We practiced a little bit yesterday.
Huh?
I practiced a little bit yesterday.
Oh, you all practiced yesterday. Okay. Go ahead and start working through it then. Just go ahead and work on your own. I'll let Pat and I'll shut up for a minute.
Okay.
Where's close all graphs?
Under window, under window at the top.
Oh, yes.
Okay, and now what?
Yeah, that's a good thought.
And then go to.
Keep your graphs. Don't let more than 2 high-res graphs be on your screen here at once, because you get 3 of them or 4 of them, and it'll bog this thing right down. So every once in a while, when you're done with a graph, close it. You can close it individually by double-clicking on the button in the upper left-hand corner, or up on the menu bar under Window, 2/3 of the way down, it says Close All Graphs. So close them every once in a while. It'll make life quicker for you. I forgot my little black clock. No, it doesn't matter. What is that? Where did you type them in? Oh, you put them in a row. Why did you get it wrong? Oh, it's one, yeah, that's what you're supposed to get. That's what you're supposed to get. They're just across row one. Yeah, just home, by the way, home will take you back to the top of your data page. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. N goes to the bottom, home goes to the top. So your data for that first sample should be scattered across row one.
You want me to keep going down?
Yep, keep going, just keep going.
Okay.
Right? I think it must be doing tutoring over here. Better not.
Well, it's an X bar, we don't print it yet, or look at it yet. Okay.
You got to put this information in. You selected me, then you've got to enter. So you got to click in that box where you want to enter it. Now type a dash, and then double click on C11. And select it. And you want to name it, so click on that. And tab will take you down there too, from one box to the next. You know, pro with this stuff, right? Yes. You get the top of that, you were down in row 1000. Gotta get up on row 1 where they are. Okay. Okay, keep going.
Where's the home command?
Right, it's on your keyboard, right next to N.
See it in that?
If your data window is active,
Yeah.
Yep, took you right to the top,
my
right?
data window is just wonderful.
I didn't know whether I said that or not. If I did, I said it so nobody heard me.
I forgot I had a keyboard.
Okay. Let me answer that question, because somebody else asked that. The question was just asked, what if I want to put this over in the word processor? Does everybody know how to copy a paragraph in a word processor and put it on another page or in another document? Well, then you know how to do it with Minitab. You highlight it, you copy it, you switch to wherever it is you want to put it, and you paste it. All it has to be is on an active window. So if it's data, it's the data window that's active. If it's in the session window, it's the session window. If it's a graph, the graph has to be active. And it's simply copy and paste.
Under edit?
Under edit, not under
First
editor,
part,
under edit.
4A.
Pardon?
4A. It's step
Copy
4A.
cell.
The first part is step 4A.
Yeah.
Are you looking at the
Must be, is it wrong? There's no quote on that standard deviation. There's no quotes on that, but there's quotes on that.
That's right. And it's entered by double clicking.
I double clicked and I didn't get the quote.
You didn't?
No.
On my computer upstairs, I did.
So I'm just doing it without it then.
If that single quote, this is that crazy idiosyncrasy, or that single quote. It shows and doesn't show. If you enter by double click, by clicking techniques, it's correct.
I'm just writing this in where it says expression.
Oh, I didn't want you to write it in.
Where am I supposed to get it?
Are you on the calculator?
Yeah,
Let's
Jesus
show
Christ.
it. Don't type this in.
Oh.
When you're at the expression, there's no need to type this in. Use the calculator and the pointer.
Where am I?
Okay?
Yeah, I know. I
There's a
mean,
parenthesis down on the key.
Oh.
So go down, you backspace and erase this one. Okay? Now go down on the calculator pad and click on the double parentheses. Now what do you want in that parenthesis? You want
C12.
X bar, right?
Double
Yeah.
parentheses.
So double click on X bar. And now what do you want to do?
Subtract.
Subtract. Click on subtract. What is it you want to subtract?
100.
100. So type in 100. Okay, now are we done in the parentheses?
No.
Isn't that all that goes in the parentheses?
Yes.
So put your pointer outside behind the parentheses and click. And now what do we want? We want a
We
division.
got double click the X bar, not just click it.
Yeah, but
If it's over here, you double click it to enter.
but I didn't
If
get
it's one of
the,
these, you just a single click.
they both got the quotes.
But did
and
they
I
type it in or not?
No.
Did you type it in or?
No.
Isn't that, what did I say?
With the 100, should I click, or do that with clicking as well?
Right here. 100 is 100. Just like you would type it in on a typewriter. You do it right here from the calculator.
Okay.
Huh?
No.
It's right here. Just point and click. You select it right from your keypad on the calculator. Did not. That's what I'm saying. That's an idiosyncrasy. So if it's there or not there, if you put it there by pointing and clicking, it's correct. It gets what it needs somehow. I don't even attempt to justify that. Don't ask, that's right.
So Rob, are you saying that if you tried to manually type all of that,
It might work
may or
too.
may not? Yeah.
That's right. If Minitab wants this single quote there, for example, and you hand type that in from the keyboard,
Right.
and you don't put it, you'll get an error message. And my feeling is, in my Stat 2 class, this is where it showed up, I think last fall, actually. We went through hell for about 3 days trying to figure out why that was happening. And then all of a sudden we realized it was that quote that was doing it. Because we were just getting error messages on things that the kid couldn't get done, but I would go to my computer and they'd come up to my office and it would work. And then they'd go back to the lab and it wouldn't work. And it turned out that it was that silly little quote mark.
What my students like to do with this in terms of, sometimes if you're first type rather than, it depends where they are, and you're just typing column C1, C5, you just type C, and
But we had that kicked back once too. Usually that will clear it if they just type in C1 instead of the word.
yeah, they don't want to say a word.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't catch it for a long time. There was, I want to say it was an analysis of variance function that wanted a quote that would accept C1 or whatever. There was one case that we found that flopped out.
Go to
Store, okay, I got it in the wrong spot.
Okay.
Did you do that? Set up right here?
Point of what?
Sometimes it does. But sometimes it
What'd you get
doesn't.
for T-star?
Depends on
Oh, that's
I
okay.
got -0.6.
Ooh.
And now what do you
I
have?
got positive
But
me
I
too.
would assume that's not significant.
How we doing?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
We having fun yet?
Knock on wood.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you mean it?
Find a calculator.
So why, so if we just put this way to see how to use the calculator function, we're going to
guess.
go to statistics,
Your calculator.
to stat, and then there's a sample T.
You didn't like my star after the 10. I went back and did it.
Oh, but on the, that's right.
Well, when you went back here, those
Keypad,
boxes,
the calculator, there's a star, and then you can click. So apparently you're saying there would be a difference.
yeah, go right on top of it. In other words, when you did the 100, you erased the first set you had and replaced it with a new one in 99.
Well, I'm done with that.
I'm glad I don't have to describe in 25 plus words.
Tab. Oh, no, where we want to be.
Enter.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
So did we do this just to see how you could enter it, but could we also go to statistics and do the statistics?
Now you go down.
You could, yeah.
Okay.
Wait, no, I take that back. You have to do this with a row because the data is across the row. If you do statistics, the data is columns.
Okay.
So it's a different
We
operation.
could have done it with C1.
Our time is moving on, so I need to get us to move to what I want you to see. Okay? Which one?
And while you're down there, you can.
I could make a comment, but I won't.
What do we do, 5 now or 6?
Oh, no.
Everybody does, right? Ignoring that is.
I know. He's getting used to it finally.
Down here. There you go.
How far are you, Pat?
I finished page 2.
Keep going.
Oh, should I keep it going?
Oh, yes, keep going. I was in hopes that we could get to see 100 samples. Because that's where I wanted to talk about what we get after that. So go on through part C, which is page 3 at least.
All this, and it's all the same, so just click over.
When you go back and revisit these dialog windows, you only have to change a couple things because the things were, Minitab remembers how you used it previous, as long as you haven't reset for some, by either leaving and coming back or. Again, in my notes, the things in bold are the ones you have to enter. When you go back and revisit, the ones that are already set, I think, are printed in normal type.
Here we go again. Okay.
So you don't even have to enter that again. See that?
Each column is a sample.
Each row is a sample.
Oh,
Column 2 is the first piece of data in every
Oh.
sample. Column 3 is the second piece of data in every sample. Each row becomes a sample. So that way you don't have to change any of the settings. That's why we did it row-wise the first
I
time.
was backwards. I was in 10 samples of 100. It's 100 samples. Okay. I'm with you.
I put in 100. Yeah, he'll leave a symbol of X. I put in 100 instead of 10, so mine go off.
We may have a mouse. I think this is one of the machines that the mouse with this keyboard will fit.
Okay, we're starting over
And you'll start right back through the same thing, and when the dialog window comes up, if you've been there before, some of the things will already be filled in, so you just have to make the adjustment.
I finished page 3. I finished page 3, so I'm gonna wait, so.
Where's your histogram?
No, it's okay, I finished page 3, so you're gonna keep going with history? Okay,
Yeah, do the histogram on, oh, that's part B, yeah,
this part, do you keep going? Okay.
yeah. That's where I want to stop and talk.
Okay.
Hmm.
Oh, boy.
Oh, I know where I was.
I misspoke when I said D. I want you to go through at least 7A. 7A, which is the first part of part D. That's where the histogram comes up with the T star distribution, we'll call it.
How do I get back to my, how do I get back to see my data now?
Control D. You've maximized your session window, so.
Oh,
Okay, one way to do that would be to unmaximize it so you sort of see both of them. Here's what I usually do. Okay. You can come here to the bottom, you can drag this one down. Drag this one up. And then when you switch back and forth, they're bigger and you can see more. That's what I like to do with them.
oh, you switch back and forth.
Just point, well, there's several ways to do it. Just go to it, point and click. Just like you would on any,
Okay.
if you've got more than one file, that's open at the same time in word processor, haven't you before?
Yeah.
Same way to jump back and forth,
Yes.
right, Beth?
Well, I haven't done that whole lot.
Oh, okay.
because I don't have it in a computer at home, and I just have to play around.
Well, it's because you're changing the name. You gotta change the name. It wasn't there before. I don't know. Hey, that's what it usually is. Okay. We put that in there.
geez.
There's that error I just saw you. We have talked about it twice, Rosemary. Get your listening
How
ears
far
on.
do you want us to go?
7A on page 4.
7A, jeez, I'm so
I
proud
can
of you.
pick on Rosemary, I think, and then me and you there.
Wait, oh, 6.
You gotta move them up one. Cumulative is, you have to go with one to the right. That's high. It's not cumulative, so you get the-
That's what we,
I still am so proud of me.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if you can do it like I think and look at an ODI rather than a histogram.
Everybody know how to read cumulative distributions?
Yes.
When have I accumulated 10? Look at the graph. When have I accumulated these 10?
Show data.
So when I copy these over on the chart, where does that 10 go?
And just choose OK.
What line on my chart does that 10 go with?
Click once annotation.
It goes with -1.
Sorry.
My favorite illustration, I always draw a little stick man with a wheelbarrow. And he's coming along, he's picking them up.
Right where the
There's 2 in here. Where do I know he is when I know he's got them all picked up? He's at the far end. He's at the upper boundary. So when you copy them over, here's another one of those little kickers that they often have trouble with. So when they get to that little chart there, you gotta have this little discussion and remind them that it goes with the upper end. Otherwise, it's not gonna match up with the theoretical one that they're gonna print off in a minute. But if they go with the upper end, you'll find it matches up pretty close.
Can you do show an ogive, or is that as close?
Oh, there's all kinds of
You
things.
can?
I just pulled this one up. I thought this one, this
I mean, it is an
one is.
ogive almost essentially, but.
It is. It's basic. It's just a different form of, so you can use any graph you want to here. I happen to use this because of the data labels, it'll put the numbers right there when we haven't got to go count or
So
any
is
of that.
there an option to make it look a little bit
Oh, yeah,
better with what
yeah.
we just did? on the
Yeah,
graph?
I think it's under options, or is it under attributes? So one of those pull downs,
Okay.
you get to choose. No, it's back on the original box.
No.
Where you get to pick the type it is, whether it's a bar or a line, or it's one of those kinds of
Okay.
options.
And I went back in and put a single quote around it and it took it.
Oh,
I mean, he said that.
What's that?
I typed in this T asterisk, that just
Uh-huh.
like, it wouldn't take
It
it.
wouldn't take it. It required, that's what I was just picking on Rosemary about, because she had the same problem and it wouldn't go. You're right.
Quotes, yeah. Oh, my kids would be so proud of me. My students would be so proud of me.
Are we doing more about? Keep going?
You can keep going if you wish.
So are we going to 8A?
If you wish, or we can stop and talk about some things. I guess since we're down to about 7 minutes left, I'd like to talk about a couple things, because if you've gotten this far, you can follow the instructions, okay? Now at this point, what we do is we have them to generate the cumulative distribution for the theoretical T distribution with 9 degrees of freedom. And I have them copy it in on the next box at 7B, right? And they get to compare it, they get to talk about it. Now, maybe there's one thing I would like to show you, because if you want to do this thing over again, it becomes terribly easy with a cut and paste technique. Okay? If you look over on page 5 of the blue handout, and you go back up to your, if you want to compare it, and you go back up on the session window, you can scroll up, and if you haven't made any errors, you will find a set of commands, a block of commands that looks exactly what's here. Now, if you've made some errors, what you need to do is to highlight it and delete them out. But we've done this, I'll call it this sequence of commands that we've just done. Highlight that whole block, copy it, Control-C, go to the active prompt, and paste the whole set in at one shot. Hit the Enter key, and it'll rerun that whole set of 15 commands all over again at one shot. So once you've identified this block, it's highlight it, Control-C to copy, Control-End, E-N-D, end, will take you to the active prompt, Control-V will paste it, hit the Enter key, and you rerun it. And they get to see the whole thing all over again. And then if you want to do it again, you're already at the active prompt. Control-V to paste it in again. Hit Enter, and it'll do it a third time. Control-V, Enter, it'll do it a fourth time. You can do it several times over and over again. And I guess the reason I like to have them do it over and over again is not to record it, but just to convince them that it's going to happen over and over again. Not identically, but very close. And they will see that this thing comes back as faithful as faithful can be. Okay?
When you say end, is it the end key or?
E-N-D, end. Yes.
Oh, E-N-D? Or
No, the key. The key. Yep.
Start.
All right? Now,
I guess you would.
we've done this in class.
It's right.
They've got to finish writing it up as their homework assignment, and they've got to do another part. Now this is where it becomes what you want it to become. And there's as many ways to do, in my mind, this follow-up assignment as there is people in this room. Sometimes I have been known to say, okay, you people in this room, you're going to do such and such. This row's going to do a different thing. This one's going to do, maybe what we would do, instead of doing samples of size 9, maybe I would assign this one samples of size 5, this row samples of size 15, size 20, pick some different numbers. It may be we're going to do it over again using a rectangular or uniform population instead of a normal. It may be I have this group do rectangular from 0 to 100. This group do use an exponential function. They don't have to know what it is. Just use this function instead of normal, and pick different ones. Maybe we'll put two normals together so we get a kind of funny-looking bimodal distribution. You can do anything you want to. You can have them do it individually as reports. You can have them do it as teams. Groups of 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. You can have them do it as a written paper. You can have them do it as an oral presentation a week later. You can do any combination of things you want as that follow-up. Okay? The interesting thing with T, I have yet to find a population that you can start with that doesn't come close. So if you do this, you better not use this as your reason to convince them that it has to be normal. You'd better do something else somewhere along the line to show them that it's still important. So the one I try to do is, if I assign this, I try to make sure I do one a little later with chi-square. And if you do the chi-square distribution, the calculated chi-square from a normal distribution, you will get a distribution that will agree fairly closely with the chi-square distribution. However, you change it to rectangular, you change it to slightly skewed, you change it to what I call J-shaped, a totally one-sided skew, and it will absolutely blow up. I mean, it won't even be within a country mile. And now they say, oh, wow, things don't always work. And to me, that's a very important lesson. One of the things I heard an hour ago was, you don't have to know what you're doing. If you can get the computer to do it, it's fine. That's always been my greatest fear with statistics. A little knowledge with statistics is almost more dangerous than ammunition for guns, I think. So you have to be careful. So every time you convince them something is the case, I think you have to make darn sure you show them there are times when this stuff doesn't work, and you better be aware of it. And so I like to follow this one up, as I said, with that chi-square where it really doesn't work. But to me, this simulation, if I felt like, boy, I learned a lot about the behavior of this thing just as I sat and did it the first time I did it a few years back. So I decided to share it with students, and it kind of opens their eyes, I think, a little bit. So that's why I wanted to share it with you today. So anyhow, that's one of the ways I use computers. I try not to do dog and pony shows. I try not to be the one sitting up here. Like today, it's tempting. It's tempting. No, a dog and pony show is where I sit up here and I'm the only one using it, and everybody else is sitting and watching. I don't think they work. To me, the dog and pony show days, that's what we had to do when I only had one computer in the classroom one computer in the department 20 years ago, and I could take it from room to room. But when you got computers for them to sit at, it's necessary for it to become an activity. To me, an activity. Everybody's doing it. If you don't have very many, you have them work in pairs. I've worked in pairs, and that works very well. Okay, I don't find it works well with 3s. Okay, but it works well with 2s. And I think it's even better if you've got some materials. And I find that, you know, the first couple lessons, students have a little bit of trouble with this because they're not quite sure how to read it and how to follow it through. But usually the first class or two, I walk them through part of it, and of course we start with fairly easy ones at the beginning of the course. So by the time we get here, they know if we're going to do this activity. They pick it up on the way in the classroom, they sit down, they go to work. They know it about 10 minutes after I'm going to interrupt them and we're going to talk about it a little bit. And they know toward the end of the period I'm going to talk to them as a group again about it a little bit. But and I just wander the room, ask questions, make sure they're writing down enough notes so they can finish it up later. The ones who stay with me, And I'll tell you, the faint-hearted ones don't, but the ones who stay with me usually tell me afterwards, God, they love it. You know, and the interesting thing is afterwards they, you know, you're the first one that ever made me use the computer enough so I know what I'm doing. I have computer science majors in Stat 1 who have taken computer science courses for 2 years, 3 years, and they'll tell me things like, you know, you're the first one that's made me actually use the computer. I really now know how to save and retrieve files and manage my files. And they've been taking these computer courses where they somehow manage to avoid all that and yet pass their courses. It's scary sometimes. Okay, so even though you have students who are supposedly computer able, a lot of them aren't. Okay, questions?
In keeping with that theme, do you graduate the details that you put in your instructions? Do you continue to give instructions for the whole semester, or do you gradually expect that?
They gradually lighten up. I do not teach programming. I do not teach them to use Minitab. I share them. I feel Minitab is simple enough that if I gave you, let's say you came in as a 19-year-old and never used the computer, I feel like if I gave you those kinds of instructions for 4 or 5 lessons, if you're conscious while you're doing it, I think you pretty well have got the pattern for pointing and clicking and filling in dialog boxes. And if you know how to do the histogram dialog box, and can put titles on it, and can put footnotes in it, and you can make those various selections, I have an idea all of a sudden if I said use the plot command and enter this information, I haven't got to put these details because they all work the same. Oh yeah, oh I do definitely lighten up. To a certain extent, I do lighten up on them, okay? But you have to continue some details because you will have, I don't know about your college, but around here, when is our commitment date to a course around here? Last day to withdraw without suffering academic penalty. In a 15-week semester, it's what, after the 12th week? 13th week. I mean, around here, it's now late in the semester. That, to me, is commitment date. So sometimes, I had a student this last semester, and I collect homework, okay? And I probably should put an absolute deadline. If after so late, it's absolutely not, but I don't usually do that. So I had a student on the 13th week, committed himself to the course, and did 13 weeks of work in the next week. And so he had to have those materials, you know, because he was trying, we were so close to the end, he was doing chapter 8 material, let's say, as well as he was trying to catch up. He didn't do a very good job, obviously, because it doesn't work that way, but he tried. He got an F with honors or something. You know? But he earned his F that way, I guess. But I'll tell you what, even though he failed statistics, he did know how to use the computer when he was done. And I hope he learned something about committing a little earlier to a course next time and a few things like that. But all those non-statistical, what do I want to call them? Objectives for learning. Anyhow, other questions? As you can probably tell, I enjoy teaching statistics. I think I've been told I could sell statistics to a wooden cigar store in Indian or something, you know. But to me, it's life. And if you can't find something in statistics that's interesting, I just think a person has to be dead. I mean, I like to read the morning newspaper, and I'd like to think I couldn't read it intelligently. I certainly that the USA Today, that's the one I usually read. You cannot read that and even understand what it said if you don't know some basic statistics and understand some of those concepts. So.
Tell the kids that, and you've got humor in the classroom.
Oh yeah. I often start the first day with 2 things. I walk in with a lesson that's this kind of it's not a computer activity, but it's an activity in the newspaper. And we start with a couple articles out of the newspaper, and then we sit down and we do a whole bunch of things. It's an activity. Actually, I sort of stole the idea from Alan last November and rewrote a lesson into an opening first day. So we have a full first day class. I'm one of those kind, you see. So, but you have to go prepared with something that they can do. And so we start with sharing heights and weights and I think some of you did his activity where you had the questions about which states are east and west of the Mississippi. I don't use that question, but things of that nature just to get them pull them right in immediately so they are part of statistics and can relate to it. Any comments, any feedback, any whatever? I couldn't possibly have been that good at telling you everything you needed to know. Well, good. Continue playing with it. I think we go from this to what?
To here.
An open lab.
Stay right here.
So you can stay right here if you want. I will see if I can't find the materials for us. And if you've got something you started yesterday, you continue. Now, the only thing I'm going to ask is this. This is the only room that has jump in online. Okay? It was supposed to be online in 104. It was supposed to be up in 206, and it's not there, unfortunately. So if you're going to use Excel and play with it, I would ask that you go over to 104. If you're going to use Minitab, it's on in here, it's in 104. It's the only one of the three that's on upstairs in 206. Do we have somebody up in 206? We can, all right? We should have. So if you're going to play with Minitab, I would ask you to go up to 206. I'm doing you a favor. It's a big, husky woodchuck running the machine up there. He's a little more horsepower. He's a little quicker. In fact, he's a whole lot quicker than this poor little chipmunk that's in here. Yeah.
Bob, is there a handout on jumping?
Yes, it's orange.
I didn't get one.
Well, apparently a lot of people didn't. It's for the lab. They're orange. The orange stack is jumping. Those are the tours. The Minitab is a blue one, and the Excel was green ones. The Excel tour seemed to be the popular one yesterday afternoon. And then one other thing, if you think you're an expert with Minitab and you want to play with the editor, oh, you erased it already. That's okay. One of the neat things that I do, and Pat and I do, this is Pat Kuby and I do, the other Patricia in our department, we wrote some lessons. For the last 2 years, we've been running a 1 credit hour course in Intro to Minitab and a word processor, sort of as a supplement to the Stat 1 course. And we wrote a series of lessons. And one of the lessons we found that our students, where we really got them hooked, was the lesson where they went on the high resolution graph and they could edit it. You know, when we had the histogram up there, if you put the pointer on the histogram, anywhere on the histogram, and double click, you will get a whole toolbar that goes with, and you can highlight things. You can draw lines, circles, add words. You can change one bar of a histogram to a different color or shade it. You can do like 20 different editing features. Well, when we do this lesson with them, it's like setting a hook when you go fishing. You got them. All of a sudden, after they do this, they start taking a little more pride in their homework for some reason, and 3/4 of them will spend an extra half an hour. I call it playing because it's too much fun to be the labor of homework, okay? And all of a sudden their homework gets better looking and better graphs. They're just paying more attention. They may not do a lot of this, but all of a sudden they have more respect for it or something, and they just kind of buy into the whole story. So if you're a Minitab expert and you want to challenge yourself, there's a separate lesson to try. The data set is on. The only thing I can think of in these, I changed the name of the directory. So if you come across something that looks like an abbreviation for beyond the formula, it really should be conference when you go on the network to find it.
So do you think this is still on M drive?
It's still on M drive, yeah, but it's under conference, not under, yeah. Let me pick up the session papers here before we get everything too tangled up. Is that yours or mine? That must be mine. Yours, I see over there.
Pass me
Stack of stuff.
Jump in.
Okay, just a second, and I will unearth them. With the Excel, again, I'll ask one book because I have enough for one for everybody. But if you have Windows 95 at home, take a blue one. There are more of the brown ones because that's what's on our system here. But there's enough difference, if you try to use that blue one on the system here, you'll get in trouble a couple of times, because there's just a couple little things that were changed.